Hello and welcome to the Church Nerd Podcast. This is Andrew. On today's episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about the new year, what it could mean for me, and what it might be able to mean for you. So stick around and let's talk about the new year. Now, when we talk about New Year's, a lot of times we end up talking about New Year's resolutions. Those things that we promise ourselves that we're going to do. And these are usually task-based things like I'm going to lose some weight, or I'm going to kick a bad habit, or I'm going to pick up a new habit that I want to do every day, like jogging or writing or starting that blog you've been talking about forever. You know, all these things are very common, and there's certainly commercials with companies selling you things that will help you along this way. And I never really found that New Year's resolutions were very effective, very helpful. Back when I used to even do New Year's resolutions, I would tell people what I was planning on doing, and even as I was saying it out loud, I knew that it wouldn't even last 2 weeks. It was false even coming out of my mouth, and maybe that's just me, maybe you can relate, I don't know. What I did find helpful a few years ago was the idea of a yearly theme. One of my favorite YouTubers and podcast hosts, CGP Grey, kind of fell into this idea of a yearly theme when he was trying to find a way to be less involved in things and to have more time for himself and his family and what have you. And he said that he was going to create a year of less. And so whenever things would come across his desk and he would look at it and say, no, wait, this is a year of less, I'm stepping back. And that idea, the year of less, helped influence his decisions, whether it was really something worth taking on or whether it could just, sort of go by the wayside. And he found it very helpful, and after the year of less, he decided to continue that kind of behavior, or at least being more skeptical or being more cautious in agreeing to do things. And I really enjoyed that. Since then, he's done other yearly themes like the Year of Order, where he kind of organized his life to be more efficient. Other people have taken on this idea of a year of more. For example, the Year of Truthfulness, one person decided to do. The Year of Health, both mental and physical. The Year of Intentionality, the Year of Light. And I don't know what this person meant by the Year of Light when they posted it, but it could mean whatever you want it to be. That's the best thing about these yearly themes, is that they're basically just ideas. Ideas that you can frame your decisions around or your actions around. Things that guide you, kind of like a North Star or an orientation point. A way that you can say, this is the kind of movement that my year is going to take. So I have found yearly themes to be very helpful. And here's how I go about choosing my yearly theme. I take a look at my past year, and I decide, where is there a deficiency? Where is something that I need course correction on? And one year I did a year of order, much like CGP Grey, where I decided I needed more balance in my family time versus my work time. As a seminary student, there was lots of homework to do, and every time I was at home, I was thinking, gosh, there's all this reading that I need to get done. I really need to be back in my office, like getting that done. And so I wasn't really as present with my family as I would have liked to have been. Or even when I was with my family, I was harping in the back of my head on all the work I needed to get done. Similarly, when I was in my office getting work done, I knew I had to rush through it, and I had to really hurry and go fast, because I needed to get back home so that I could help my wife with our daughter, just doing family chores and errands and all those kinds of things. And so there was just this tension on both spheres. I couldn't really enjoy either one because I was worried about the other all the time. And so this year of order that I constructed for myself helped me stop to decide where are ways I can create balance. And I found that being very diligent about my schedule keeping and my calendar was really, really helpful. It gave me freedom to not worry about what was coming down the pipe because I knew it was already accounted for and put into my calendar. Likewise, I started to really explore the depths of some to-do apps like Todoist and Things, and I found which apps worked for me. I tried them both. It was really good. I even went as far as to figure out how I could make a massive, expansive spreadsheet that I could then use a Google add-on to take this spreadsheet and have it auto-populate all of the calendar events in my Google Calendar. So, for example, with my classes, I took all of my classes for a given semester, and I created this spreadsheet that had all of the assignments and the days they were due, and that is what populated my class schedule. And so on my phone, anytime I needed to say, hey, what's that reading for next week, or when is that paper due, I could just tap on my phone, a few taps here and there, and I knew exactly what was due on any given day. And I even had those events color-coded so that I knew that like big events that were like test dates and paper due dates were coded in red, and likewise other like smaller obligations had different colors. It was a really nerdy dive into a calendar and to a to-do list, but it really helped me because at the front of the semester, I was doing all this work, and yeah, it was a lot of overkill on 1 or 2 days of actually putting it all into the computer. But once it was done, the entire semester was just easy. I just had it all laid out. The road was paved, and I knew where I was going. Now, did I have to go through all that digital input? No, I mean, you could do the same thing with pen and paper. You could just print out your syllabi and stick them on a corkboard and say, okay, well, what's due next week? And you'd flip to that day on the piece of paper and say, oh, well, chapter 5 is due. You can do it however you want, and the reason I did it digitally was that I had it in my pocket or I had it on my computer. Anywhere I was, I knew I could find that information, and so I wasn't locked into a given space where things were physically posted on a wall. I just really appreciated not having my information geographically grounded in a particular place, like at a corkboard in my office, but just having it in my pocket wherever I was. Whether I was really worried about when a paper was due while I was on the playground with my daughter, and instead of freaking out about, oh no, is that due tomorrow or is it due next week? I could just stop for a minute, look at my phone and say, oh, okay, great. And then just continue pushing my daughter on the swing. So if this sounds like something that might interest you, just tease it out. Try different things. Figure out what works for you. And once you've decided that this works, just keep doing it. And one more thing before I get off my discussion of my year of order is just email. So many emails. I found that keeping separate Gmail accounts up and running was really a lot of work. And even though they have smart folders, which will automatically pull all of your emails from a given sender, whether it's your gas bill utility or your electric bill utility or your mother or a newsletter that you subscribe to, you can have all of these things automatically pulled and grouped into places where you can read them later. You can have them automatically archived. Automation and smart folders, especially in Gmail, are just fantastic. I'll also say, of course, none of these are sponsored, but there's a email app called Spark, and it does a great job of letting you congregate multiple email addresses into one big smart inbox, and it organizes them extremely well. And especially if you have friends that also use Spark, you can have side conversations about a particular email that don't go into this long email thread with all these kinds of indentations and, all that garbage that comes on when everyone starts replying to a big group email thread. So if you have a work group or a bunch of people that you are trying to collaborate with and it's based around a specific email you get, try Spark. I really enjoy it. It's only available for Mac and iOS, but totally enjoy it. Check it out. Also, while I'm plugging some Mac products, the iOS Shortcuts app works really, really well for automating just little things that you do every day. It just, all those little times you can save a couple of minutes of tapping the same steps that you go through every day, whether it's starting a playlist while you jog or what have you, getting your, morning weather report, powering down your phone because you know that at 2 o'clock you're going to start getting low power, so you might as well put it on low power mode, what have you. All those kinds of automations have really helped me, and they're kind of fun to figure out and piece together. I'll also say Hazel on Mac computers is really good at organizing all of your folders and your contents for you, whether that's sorting new files into a particular place or searching for files of a given tag or color code. It all just works great. It keeps your computer clean and tidy and organized. Other things that have really helped me, Zapier is a really good way to automate things between your apps. And if you really want to get into the weeds of it and you have a Mac, use Automator. Automator is, Hazel is like a really user-friendly version of Automator, and Automator already comes on your computer. You don't have to buy it, and you can set up some really intense threads, some actions and workflows that will automatically monitor specific folders on your computer, that every time you put a PDF of a certain type or description, it will automatically log it and duplicate it and rename it, or wherever you want to do it, it'll move it to another folder. You can tie that into your Dropbox. It's really great. If you'd like to talk to me more about automation, you can message me via Twitter or email or whatever. I'll also recommend the Automators podcast for you to learn all kinds of tricks with that. Again, none of these are sponsorships. They're just things that I've really enjoyed, and if it helps you, great, because I spent a year toying with it and learned a lot. Now, all right, so that was my year of order. Last year, 2019, was the year of prayer. Again, yearly themes are kind of a response to a feedback loop. And so I had felt that my prayer life was lacking. And again, because of this work-life balance and wanting to be as present for my family as possible, I didn't feel that I was doing enough prayer the way I used to do my first year in seminary. So in my second year in seminary, I was like, I really need to up my prayer because it started out so well and then it kind of tapered down. So this is going to be 2019, the year of prayer. And so I try to dedicate myself to going to the daily office here in seminary more often. I also tried to find new ways of praying, whether that's through meditation or daily examinations like the Loyola example, the Ignatian Examen. Google it. It's fantastic. It just takes 2 minutes, and it really helps you talk to God in a very brief way that makes you grateful and gives you some valuable feedback. Anyway, I was exploring these new prayer forms and prayer types. I also really wanted to kind of dig into some old prayers from ancient traditions and liturgies that I was not familiar with. So I figured I would start reading old Byzantine prayers and all that kind of stuff, digging into some Eastern Orthodoxy, because I really do find the Eastern Orthodox Church fascinating. And it's really surprising how much in common, at least as an Anglican, we share with the Orthodox Church. You think that, whether you are more of a Protestant Reform, you're more kind of a Lutheran Anglican versus a Anglo-Catholic, there's kind of that spectrum that many of us are familiar with. If you're an Anglican or an Episcopalian, you kind of fall in the, are you more of a Protestant Episcopalian, or are you more of an Anglo-Catholic Episcopalian? What I was really surprised to find is that really, especially if you're kind of broad church, we share a lot with the Orthodox community as far as our views on the sacraments and our liturgy and our prayer life. So I try to read some more Alexander Schmemann, who is an Orthodox theologian and writer whose works are phenomenal. I'm going to link to those that I can. One of my favorites of his books is For the Life of the World. Alexander Schmemann, For the Life of the World. I'll link to it in the notes. So I thought I was going to really delve into all these prayers, maybe memorize a few of them, and really explore what prayer meant for me and what I would get out of it. And I have to say, I didn't really get as much as I was hoping to get out of the year of prayer. Probably because, as you just noticed, I listed off a bunch of things I wanted to do. And really, it just became a cluster of resolutions. And again, resolutions are more action-based. They're tasks and goals that you can complete. And a yearly theme is really more of an idea that helps push decisions, maybe prompts you into some action, but it's really more of a broad idea. So I think the year of prayer was a little misguided, at least for me, the way I was thinking about it, because it was too action-oriented and not just general, what are my thoughts, or what is prayer going to mean for me moving forward. Now, certainly, a year of prayer done properly could result in all these actions like reading Shmeeman and going to daily office and all those things. But I don't know. I don't feel like I really got much out of it, and I probably let it fizzle out and didn't really hold myself accountable to it. Part of that is because I let go of my feedback loops. I needed some kind of way to check in with myself and see how I'm doing, whether that's setting up a quarterly review for yourself or a monthly review. I think I went into it with really good intentions and just never really made it happen. And so that's kind of a warning for y'all. If you're going to do a yearly theme, they're great. They can mean whatever you want them to be. It can be something as esoteric as the year of light or the year of joy, the year of positivity. But don't try to let them be too specific. Let them be just ideas that track across many parts of your year. And, I'm using the term year. These could be seasonal things. You could have a season of prayer, a season of joy, a season of positivity, a season of growth, a season of introspection. These could be chunks of years. They could be 18 months long. They could be, of course, much less. That's why I like these themes versus resolutions, is that they are much more tailorable. They're much more bespoke, if you will. And so what does 2020 hold for me? Well, I am declaring this for myself, the year of ordination. And what do I mean by that? I mean by preparing myself in body, mind, and spirit to take these very solemn vows when I am ordained by my bishop, to obey his counsel and his leadership, to be faithful in prayers, in the reading of Holy Scripture, to look for Christ in all others and be ready to serve and help them when they are in need, to pattern my life in accordance with the teachings of Christ so that I can be a wholesome example for all people. And those are just the diaconal vows. The priesthood is a whole different set of vows. And I want to be clear that while I talk about my year of ordination, I'm not talking about a done deal. You see, it's entirely under the discretion of the bishop whether you are ordained, up until the bishop is actually putting hands on your head. I've known seminarians who knew they would be ordained in the month of November, but didn't have a date until 2 weeks before the service was set, and so they had to rush and get programs printed and mailed out to family members and all that kind of stuff. I also have known people who thought they were going to be ordained on a particular date, and then the bishop, for whatever reason, said, we're going to hold you off for a few months so that we can have a continuing conversation about your understanding of church politics or your sense of pastoral care or, whatever it is for that individual person. These can be highly individualized. And that's the care that the bishops take, because once you ordain someone, that's it. They're ordained. I mean, yes, the church can inhibit people and remove them from service, but they are still an ordained member of the clergy. They may not be practicing, but they are still ordained. And so bishops take lots of care to make sure that it is the right fit for the person and the right fit for the church and the right fit for the body of Christ global. And so there really is a lot of discernment on both sides of that conversation. And so as I talk about my year of ordination, I don't want to say I'm just gonna go get ordained in June. I just happen to know that that's when Mississippi tends to ordain their seminary graduates. And so because of this lack of certainty ahead of time, there's this cloud of, oddly enough, superstition that goes around seminarians. Until they have the hands on their heads, people don't really know if they're getting ordained or not. And so some people will refuse to buy clerical shirts, those black shirts, typically black shirts with the white collar, or they won't get any vestments fitted for them, especially like those long stoles, those kind of scarf-looking things that people wear. They won't get them until right before they're ordained. And they're even superstitious about trying them on. I knew one person who wouldn't get a headshot done in preparation of getting a posting because they couldn't wear the shirt because they weren't ordained yet. And, I had to do a practicum, a class where they sort of teach you how to do all the priesty things. So my group was in charge of performing a practice Eucharist. Without any actual blessed elements, we used water and bread. But I still had to, as the celebrant, or as the faux celebrant, I still had to, wear the white alb and put on the stole and put on top of that the chasuble, which is this large poncho-looking thing. And it was the first time I had really put those things on. And I really didn't want to. I felt like I was being naughty. And that seems weird because the cloth that you put on doesn't make you any different. A priest is not a priest when they're wearing the stole or because they're wearing the stole. A priest is a priest all the time. And likewise, me putting on a stole doesn't make me a priest. It doesn't change me in any way. But we are a liturgical people, and we believe that the things that we wear mean something about what we do. So while we're all members of the body of Christ, we're all Christians, there are some people that wear these long robes and they sing when music happens, and they're called the choir. Or here are some teenagers carrying in the elements of worship, and we call them acolytes, and they wear these kinds of robes. And then there are these other people that have these funny collars on their shirts, and then they wear these big poncho-looking things, and these are our celebrants and our presbyters, and here's our deacons that hold up the gospel when they read it. And so we believe that the things you wear speak of the purpose that you serve. And so clerics, the deacons and the priests, those who have been ordained, have been set aside for a special purpose, and that is the administration of the sacraments and the spreading of the gospel and the work and word of the church. And so that's why they wear those things. That's why they get to wear those things. And so I didn't want to wear the vestments in this practice, what we call a practicum, because I wasn't there yet. Even though I really want to be and hope to be and feel called to be, I'm not there yet. And so it felt weird to put them on. Anyway, I just wanted to make that clear that it's not a done deal, but I'm working real hard to prepare myself to take on these really solemn vows. All these promises are they're life-changing. And so it's not just a matter of saying, I'm ready to do this. All right, here I go. Where do I sign on the dotted line? I'm giving myself this year of ordination, to prepare myself to take these solemn vows, much like an elite athlete prepares day after day, hour after hour for their gymnastics event or their Major League Baseball premiere or whatever it is. I'm preparing myself for this life-changing promise I'm going to make before God and before my family and before all those who I care about. Anyway, how am I going to go about doing it? And so my first step is to read through those ordination vows and to think about them bit by bit and line by line, slowly and over long periods of time. And how can I attune my life better toward Christ and be a better Christian myself? How can I then prepare myself to lead other people prayerfully and with compassion? How can I spur myself on to help others when maybe I'm just not having a great day and don't really feel like being super helpful? How can I stop and listen for God prayerfully in my own prayer life? Or maybe see someone who's having a bit of a struggle and saying, how can I pray for you today? These are questions that I'm asking myself and stopping to really contemplate and consider. Now, one thing I've considered doing is a life confession, preparing for that. And in case you didn't know, the Episcopal Church does indeed have confession. Now, it's not probably what you and I are thinking of, where in a TV or movie we were shown something like there's a person in a Catholic setting who goes into a wooden booth and closes the door and sits down. And then the priest, who's in the next stall over, slides a little screen and says, "How may I help you, my son?" It's not quite that. It's not that formalized. What we have is in our prayer book, we have the penitential order, which is a set of prescribed words that you would say with a priest for confession's sake. And so the priest would put on their stole, and you would say these prayers, and then you would say what was heavy on your heart, and you would kind of confess these sins. Then the priest would say some prayers over you, pronounce God's forgiveness, maybe even anoint you with oil, and lend words of counsel. And those words of counsel could be some advice, maybe some words of confidence and cheer, maybe even put you in touch with professionals who would specialize in the treatment of whatever it is that you had confessed. Maybe it's getting in contact with a personal therapist or a family therapist, a marriage counselor. Maybe it's an addiction specialist. Who knows? It depends on what the individual is confessing. Does it require further treatment? Is it just a one-and-done deal? It depends. But that is how confession works in the Episcopal Church. You meet with your priest, usually in their office, and you have this conversation within this liturgical style, this liturgical form. And everything in confession, said in the confines of confession, is protected under the seal of confession. So priests can't talk about it further. In fact, they don't even speak about it to you again later. So it's not like if you went back and talked to them, they would bring back, oh, well, remember last year when you confessed that da-da-da-da-da. It's not even that. It is sealed and completely encapsulated in that one instance. And that's kind of different from healing. The service for healing can do a lot of those things where you are bringing things that are heavy on your heart, and you are being spiritually healed through the laying on of hands and anointing. It's similar but slightly different. Depends on what you want to do and which liturgy speaks to you. Depends on which one you want to use. Again, it's all highly individualized, and they write these services in this way so that you can tailor it to whatever the situation is. Now, if you've never done confession, like I've never done a proper confession, I've done some healing services here and there, but nothing as specific as confession or the penitential order. So what you would do is you would want to talk to your clergy and say, I want to do a life confession. And so what that is a confession of all of the decades that you haven't confessed yet. So, I'm 37, so I would be doing, 37 years worth of confessing. And so my priest would probably say, okay, take these next weeks or maybe, these next month or two, and sit down and think about what it is you feel you need to confess. Write it down. And as you're writing it, other things may pop up and you have to write those down. And so you just sort of collect your thoughts and have them ready so that when you enter into this first confession, you are able to get it all laid out there on the table. And then God's forgiveness is pronounced, and you just go on from there. And so then the next time you go to confession, it would just include that span of time since your last confession. And so that's how confession works. And why would you do it? It just depends on if you feel that you've done something so bad that general confession just doesn't quite work for you. You feel that there's some sort of distance that's been created between you and God. Maybe you feel so racked with guilt from your sin that you have damaged your relationship with God. And so you need to confess to someone else, not because it's demanded or it's expected, but because you need some spiritual healing. This is spiritual healing. Do you have to go to confession? No. In fact, there's a little line that we usually say that as far as confession goes, none must, all may, and some should. And so that's how you would gauge whether you feel that you need to approach a priest about confession. And if you feel that this is something that you want to take advantage of, talk to your priest about it and say, I've got some things that are weighing heavy on me that normal prayer hasn't helped with, or I don't really know how to talk to God about this. Can I talk to you? And see what that priest says. They may recommend you to another clergy that would be better suited for that. Maybe they have a counseling background and can offer you some wiser counsel. If they are going to do that and they have a special background in counseling or therapy, they would sort of be doing both. They would have to keep their licenses up to date. Anyway, that's a whole sidebar for a different time. But, your priest should be able to at least sit down and talk with you. And if you want to do a proper confession, talk to them about that and see what they say. Again, not all priests have that as a part of their ministry. They would rather pastor to you in different ways. So just check with your clergy and see what they say. But for me, I have found talking to clergy during my own times of trouble and woe does really help. I mean, going to just a healing service where you just go up and just receive a prayer without even needing to talk individually. Sometimes they will take you off to the side. You can say a few quick words. A lot of times it's just walk up and just receive the spiritual healing of God with the laying on of hands and the anointing upon the head. Anyway, I find those services very helpful for me, but sometimes you just really need to say it out loud, privately to a priest, and just get it out there. I feel that's a really powerful ministry that we can offer people as clergy. So if I'm going to do that, I need to be practicing confession myself and participating in that for my own peace of mind, my own spiritual growth. And so I'm going to do a life confession, I hope, and then continue on from there, not only just as an ordained person, but just, I think any person, whether they're lay or ordained, would probably do well to take some time to think about what is distancing themselves from God and to seek out whatever is the best way to restore that relationship, whether it's just through some thoughtful prayer, some intentional acts, maybe going out and making restitution with people you've wronged, it all depends. So that's something I plan on doing as part of my year of ordination. And I'm hoping it goes really well. Still kind of scared, but hope it goes well. Another thing I'm going to do for my year of ordination is to learn how to listen to myself again. I need to listen for times when my body is telling me stop and rest, when my mind is telling me I need to recharge, when my spiritual voice is telling me you need some renewal. Because when I'm placed in a church, that's going to be the first time I've done that kind of work. And so the demands of the job are going to be completely new to me. The demands of my time are going to be completely different from what I'm used to. And I need to be able to take time and say, no, I have to go rest. I have to relax. I have to recharge because I need to be able to come back to you as a fully functioning member of society. I need to be able to do my job well, and that demands some rest on my part as well. Now, rest could be something simple as, yes, I'm going to give myself an afternoon to take a nap. It could be something more elaborate, like working on a hobby to kind of get the creative juices flowing. It could be stepping aside to say, I need to read this book because this is going to help me in a sermon that I don't even know about 6 months down the road, but this is good time to stop and take a minute to read. And then there's the more elaborate periods of rest, and that's going on a vacation with your family, which you are totally allowed to do. And I'm awful at carving out that time. I'm terrible at taking vacation. Another thing that's been a really good practice for me in seminary is we have what are called quiet days each semester, so twice a year. And that is a day where the entire seminary would go to a separate location, not on campus, and we would usually go to a conference center somewhere nearby, and we would have guided talks that we would listen to from a guest speaker. And then in between those talks, we would have an hour and a half or 2 hours of silence where we could walk the grounds, maybe journal, read a passage, things like that. So usually there's some promptings that go with those quiet days where, I want you to go reflect on so-and-so. But I find those quiet days where I'm just put in a different location and told to be quiet are extremely helpful. And for me, I always try to find a place where I can go in the woods or at least in some wooded area and just be alone and quiet. And so my plan for right now is to take one quiet day a semester so that I can go to a place, hopefully wooded, and just basically sit in the woods and be alone for a day and listen to God and pray and draw and do whatever I need to do. I find those are really rejuvenating, especially spiritually, because whenever we have jobs, whether it's in a church or outside of a church, it's really easy to focus so much on the job that you forget to take care of yourself. And so prayer falters and slips away. Just simple conversations with God don't happen nearly as often as you would want them to. So finding ways to listen to myself and know when I need to recharge and when I need to rest will be very important for me going forward, because it's going to be such a new type of work that I've never been stressed in those ways before, and I need to be able to learn how to limber up and come back to it fresh. And so those are some of the things that are going into my year of ordination. I'll keep you updated on how the year of ordination grows and continues and what works and what doesn't work. Because that's the nice thing about these yearly themes, is that it's not like, oh, he said he was going to do retreat and he was going to do life confession and he was going to do X, Y, and Z. The great thing about the yearly theme is that it's just such a broad idea that you can tailor it in real time. And you could say, well, that's really not working, but we're going to go ahead and go this way with it. Anyway, I think it's a really helpful thing. And if you like the idea of yearly themes, let me know if you've picked one for yourself. I would love to know what kinds of themes y'all come up with. So please hit me up on Twitter with that. And that's all the time we have for this episode of the Church Nerd Podcast. A quick reminder before we head out that there is still about a week left in the new Patreon supporter giveaway. So if you sign up to become a new patron of the podcast between now and January 6th, 2020, you will be in the running to receive a free pair of Sockreligious socks. They are nerdy, they're churchy, they're wonderful, and they're really, really comfortable. Patrons of the podcast not only receive the regular episodes posted here, but also extra episodes that I upload just for those members. Also, extra content, other things. It's pretty cool. You can do it for just as little as $1 a month, and if you can afford a little more and prayerfully consider that as a way of giving back to this endeavor, please do so. Links to the Patreon support page and all those things will be found in the show notes, as well as the website, thechurchnerd.com. As always, this is Andrew. I hope the new year finds you well, and as always, God bless.